So this session we will sit together. I'll give a few instructions for those who would like them, but feel free to follow your own meditation system if you prefer. Okay, good. So settle yourself into your meditation posture. We'll sit together for around 25 minutes. Whatever system you are using, try to pay attention to the nature of the mind, the nature of consciousness. That is, your attention will pick up one thing at a time to pay attention to. You will be conscious of somebody next to you moving or making a noise. Then your attention moves. You're conscious of your nose. Your attention moves. You're conscious of the air conditioning. Lasts for a few moments. Then you think about what you're going to eat this evening. Then you think about how you're going to travel. And so on and so forth. The mind will move from one thing to another thing to another thing. This is the analysis of consciousness as like a spotlight or a torch, flashlight in a darkened room. The flashlight can move around the room, can be aware of, can shine on anything in the room, but it's only pointing in one direction at a time. So your conscious attention moves from one thing to another thing to another thing continually. This chaotic nature of the mind is covered or hidden by stories, storytelling, both conscious storytelling and assumed or subconscious storytelling. Will attempt to bind your experience together to provide a narrative, a way to navigate experience. As a meditator, you should drop the storytelling. Bring attention to the mind moving from one thing to another thing. We talk about it as an object arising in consciousness, or cognizing one object after another object. This nature of the mind is true for all people. It can be observed. Don't think that it's just your mind that jumps around. If you see the mind jumping around, it means you have established mindfulness. You're seeing things as they really are. In amongst this chaotic movement of attention, try to maintain awareness of the body, generalized awareness of the body. You can use the breath or just the body itself. Keep bringing your attention back to the body. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. Start to feel that consciousness or awareness that is independent of the things you are paying attention to, independent of the sound, of the sight, the thoughts, the memories, the feelings. Holding your mind in restraint, not allowing it to get absorbed in any stories or any object. Maintaining awareness of the body. You may experience the body become large or very small. You may experience the body become bright or intensified or energized. You may experience the body may appear to you very pleasant in sensation. All of these are correct or right experiences. You may experience the mind go dull or sleepy or reluctant or get lost in thought or desire. Try to extricate yourself from all mind states, from all objects of attention. For the last few minutes of the meditation, please turn your attention to the idea of gratitude, of being grateful for a healthy working body, grateful to live in a peaceful society, free from war, fire, floods, hurricanes, grateful for your friends and family who support you, nurture you, grateful for Dharma, for teachings. One sure shortcut to happiness is to practice this mind of gratitude, Gatanyo in the Pali. Appreciating what you have is an easy way to fulfill your desires. So we cultivate this mind of gratitude by deliberately calling it into mind, using any method that you can, using any thought or trigger that you can think of, to call to mind, to arouse, to hold on to and maintain this thought and feeling of gratitude. This is a beautiful mind state. Big part of our practice is cultivating beautiful mind states. Normally, you don't take time or make effort to deliberately call into mind gratitude, loving kindness. So we make a practice deliberately training ourselves to call into mind these beautiful mind states so that they are close to you, they easily call to mind. Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha tejena rakang bandami sabbhaso sabba buddha nubhavena sattha soti bhawantute sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha tejena rakang bandami sabbhaso Sabba dhamma nubhavena sattha soti bhawantute Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha tejena rakang bandami sabbhaso Sabba sangha nubhavena sattha soti bhawantute. Okay, so relax your posture. Okay, so we have little less than an hour together, and nice to see some of you people who I know from years ago, and some new people too. Our topic this evening I wanted to bring up is a key element of Buddhism is called Gayakata Sati. Gaya means the body. And Sati is mindfulness. Put this together, this is a key teaching, one of the 3 key teachings of meditation was mindfulness of body. So this arises in a very particular and specific way, which not so many people talk about. And for myself, for many, many years, I was taught the wrong way for mindfulness of body. And it's frustrating to me now to know that all that time I was practicing in the incorrect way. As I mentioned in the start of the meditation, we have this process of consciousness. The Pali word is vijnana. Jnana is to know, and it's related to the English word know. It's a funny N. We don't have this N in English, so it's a jnana. It's a slightly different N sound. So in Thai, it's yan. Sometimes yana, but usually yan. And vi means special or specific. The preface, vi. So vijnana is the translation that always gets translated as consciousness, but in fact does not mean consciousness. It means cognizing a sense object in technical Buddhist language. So what this means is, as you turn your attention inwards in meditation, you should be able to experience the mind flitting from one thing to another thing to another thing. This is the process of cognizing objects in technical Buddhist language speech. So what we say is, if you have the eye and there are things that you can see, if you put your attention there, that thing will arise into consciousness. Or put another way, you will cognize that object. So if you cognize this interesting looking monk to my right, it's hard not to notice. While you are looking, that is now coming up into your conscious attention. While you are attending to that, you are not attending to the scene behind me. I always forget about this. I know it might be quite distracting for you, but for me, I don't see it, so I don't mind. Do you want to turn it off? Is it okay? You're all okay with it? Okay. It's nice on the video. It looks like I'm flying through the forest. So you put your attention onto that. You have the eye, you have a form, you have attention, manasikara, the Pali word. You put your attention there, then it arises into your conscious awareness. And while you're attending to that, you've forgotten about this monk to my right. Our attention, conscious attention, actually is extremely limited. If you follow psychology or cognitive philosophy, there's a lot of research into this, of just how amazingly restricted and limited our conscious attention is. And yet, the mind creates what there's a psychologist called Anil Seth, he wrote a very good book. He calls a controlled hallucination. So it's like a hallucination in the mind that you really do think you're aware of all these colors and all of these people and all of these feelings in the body. But actually your conscious attention is extremely limited. Famous experiment of this is called the invisible gorilla experiment. You've seen this, some of you? There's some people playing basketball, and you have to count how many times the ball is passed between these, I think, 9 people. And so you have to count very carefully where the ball goes. And while this is happening, a woman in a gorilla costume comes into the front of the camera, does a little dance and walks off. And most people don't notice the gorilla. And when you tell them there was a gorilla, they say they don't believe you. So look up this experiment, gorilla, invisible gorilla experiment. There are lots of variations on it, especially for people who know about the experiment already. So in one of them, you're waiting for the gorilla to come on, and you miss the fact that 3 of the people who were playing basketball had just walked off. Because you're so clever, because the eye can see the gorilla, and then you miss. Or that the ball has changed color. There's a lot of these variations. Another interesting experiment done with the eye. It's amazing that you think your eye can see so much, but actually it's just a very tiny amount of your vision can actually see in any detail. So they had a eye tracker, so they can see exactly where your eye is pointed. And they had you read a screen, a large screen, say like an A4 size piece of paper. And on that screen, the page was filled with X's, small X's. But the exact spot where your eye focuses, they put letters and words. And as your eye moves around this page, you can see just a few letters on the page. All the rest of them are X's. The people who are in this test have no idea that the page is filled with X's. They swear that it is filled with text. As the eye can only see a tiny little bit. The brain fills in the rest. Oh, it must all be letters. And when you show them the video of what they were looking at, they can't believe that 95% of what they were looking at was just X's. So our mind creates this hallucination, creates a world around us. You think you can see colors, but if you put colors, there's an experiment with crayons, different colored crayons, and if you put them at the periphery of the eye and you make people look forward, you can't tell what colors they are. But you swear when you look, you think, no, I can see colors all around me. You actually can't. It's part of this hallucination. So the brain tries to tie experience together for you, and it creates stories to do so. So you have the story that you came here, you listened to me for 40 minutes, and then you left. But that's not your experience, right? Your experience is you come in here, you feel the air conditioner, you listen to me, you get uncomfortable in your back, you wonder what the time is, you check your email. Your attention has moved from one thing to another thing continuously. If you practice meditation in the right way, this nature of consciousness will start to expose itself. You'll start to see it. And then people complain and say, my mind is jumping around. And miss the fact this is how your mind is all of the time. You just don't notice. Because your brain is tying experiences together into stories and narratives, which is necessary in order to navigate the world. So the meditator should start to see attention jumping around from one thing to another thing to another thing. This the Buddha described as like a monkey swinging through the forest. It grabs hold of one branch, lets go, is already grabbing another branch. Lets go of that, is already grabbing another branch. He's not describing the modern mind that's so busy and has so many things to do. He's describing every human mind. You just don't notice this nature of mind. It's covered by stories. It's covered by this hallucination. So as your attention moves around, in Buddhist terminology, we describe it this way. If you have the eye, and there are things that you can see, if you put your attention onto objects, you have eye consciousness arising, or cognition arising. So you cognize the monk, you cognize the fan, you cognize me, and you all based upon the eye. Then your attention goes to your ear, you hear the sound of the aircon, you hear somebody scratching behind you, you hear the sound of the police car outside, and your attention has gone to that. That, we say, you have the ear, you have sounds. If you put attention there, then you will have ear consciousness or hearing consciousness arise. This is the actual exact way that Sakyamuni Buddha was teaching, almost word for word. In fact, I can read it out to you. I say that because there are a lot of things these days that pass for Buddhism and actually aren't. I see a lot of quotations that say the Buddha underneath it, and I know it's not come from the Buddha. One of them said, what you think of, you manifest in the world around you. I'm like, Buddha never used words like that. Or although I hear quite often talk about going past the ego or destroying the ego. The Buddha never had the concept of the ego. That comes from psychology. He never said anything about an ego. So a lot of things pass for Buddhism these days that actually don't come from the Buddha. So what I'm describing to you here is actually the way Sakyamuni Buddha was teaching 2,500 years ago. You have feelings in the body. As you put attention onto the feelings in your body, you have body consciousness arising. For example, you have a pain in your knee. When you put attention onto it, knee pain arises. When you put your attention onto something else, the knee pain is gone from consciousness. Now you assume that your knee is hurting the whole time, because every time you check back to the knee, it's still hurting. I always wanted to go back to the stories. I know many of you have heard the stories before, but they're good stories. The time my father hit his thumb with a hammer, and it I know, I always go to this story, but it's true. And hit his right hand. So he's shaking his hand, he's in such pain, and oh, my hand really hurts. And then he's busy working, and he's like, I look at him, he's not paying attention to the pain. So we're driving home, and he's driving quite happily and indicating and turning, changing lanes. And then at one point he's, oh, my hand really hurts. So I said to him, your hand was not hurting the whole time. He said, no, it's hurting the whole time. What do you think? Is the thumb hurting the whole time or not? The hallucination, the storytelling, the mind will try to bind experience into stories. So it will say, every time I look at my thumb, it's hurting. So the story that you tell yourself is my thumb hurts the whole time. Actually, it's not true. It comes up into consciousness, then your awareness flips to something else, and then comes back to the thumb. So wherever attention lands on any of the senses, including the mind, because a thought can come up, and you can put your attention onto that thought. A memory can come up. You can put your attention onto that memory. Your mind stays with that memory for a while, then gets distracted by something else. This movement of the mind around from one thing to another thing to another thing, the Buddha said you should be aware of. And here's the key. This is the exact words. In fact, I can read you the exact words. The monk sees an agreeable sight with his eye. He doesn't desire it or enjoy it. He doesn't give rise to greed. His mind and body are steadied internally, well settled and freed. If they see a disagreeable sight with the eye, they are not dismayed. Their mind isn't hardened or dejected or full of ill will. Their body and mind are steadied internally, well settled and well freed. He hears a sound with the ear, smells something with the nose, feels something with the body, etc. The mind does not get caught up in the signs and features of that thing. So he dwells, not attaching to anything in the world. You may have heard in Buddhism, we say attachment is the cause of suffering, which makes no sense philosophically. You are attached to your wife, your house, your pension. You are attached to feeding your cat. Surely feeding your cat is not the source of suffering. Or disagreeable things. I think it was Joe here at the back. He said, every time I hear Christmas music in the shopping mall, my mind goes into disagreeableness. Well, if you hear something or see something or smell something that's disagreeable, you don't get caught up in the signs and features of that. You dwell with the mind settled, steadied, and internally or inwardly aware. So you see what is being described here is a kind of limbo state, not allowing the mind to go out to anything, including thoughts. Thoughts in Buddhist understanding are considered external, because your mind goes to this memory or goes to this thought or goes to this desire. You're holding your mind in a limbo. Now this is quite important, because in order to do that you need to maintain a body awareness. But I've already said that the mind doesn't go to the feelings in the body, and this confused me for many, many years. Because certain experiences when you meditate are the correct experiences. And if you're not aware of this, or if it hasn't been talked about or mentioned or taught, then when the mind is attaining in the right way, you don't recognize the signs. So body awareness that you restrain the mind from, all of this conscious process is a practice of restraint, not attaining something, not creating something. You don't have to create the breath or create a vision or create a mantra. These things you can use just to settle the mind down, but at some point you have to let go of your meditation object. You have to, in order to progress. I didn't realize this for so many years. Some student of mine, I was teaching a course in my university, and for a few days, teaching online, and they had to do a very short presentation. So one of them presented about jhana, or concentration meditation. And his English, bless him, is not very good. And so he started off, I say we have concentration, and he was talking like this. His English is not so good. That's fine. And then suddenly his English became perfect. He's reading off Wikipedia. I can type it in as he reads it and it comes up, Wikipedia. Anyway, and as he's reading a description of concentration meditation in Buddhism, which says you have an object of concentration, you put your mind onto it and hold it there as the mind becomes still, and then you hold it tighter and the mind becomes rapturous, and you hold it tighter and the mind becomes pleasant, and you hold it tighter until your mind is absolutely 100% totally locked onto the object of concentration. I'd read these kind of descriptions for many years, and I was told them by many teachers who don't practice concentration meditation, and it's completely wrong. So, what the Buddha actually said was, you watch this process of the mind jumping around and you hold it in restraint. This is not a practice of focusing on an object. This is a practice of holding the mind back from all objects. As you hold the mind in restraint and mindful awareness, this is what mindfulness really meant. It's not mindful of washing the dishes or being mindful of your feet walking. These are okay practices, but mindfulness, sati sampajanya. Sati means to call into mind. Sampajanya means your own awareness. So you maintain this knowledge of your own awareness by restraining the mind from going out to anything. This mindfulness then starts to manifest in a particular way. You get a body consciousness will start to arise or appear. This is a generalized body awareness, and you see it with awareness, not with the imagination or not with thought. A generalized body awareness, you just see with awareness the whole body, not my aching knee or my pleasant hand or my neck or my breath, the whole body. As the mind gets accustomed to not going out to anything, what happens is consciousness, there are many ways to describe it, but consciousness will become aware of itself, or you become conscious of awareness. I would like to say you get self-awareness, but some Buddhists are allergic to the word self, so we have to stay away from the word self. If you want to know about that, I can explain that. But this body awareness will come up. As you hold the mind into restraint, the mind just becomes aware of the mind, or the mind starts to become bright and clear. This is a purification of mind or purification of consciousness. Remember, the Buddha described his path. When he was asked to summarize his path, he said, refrain from evil, bapa, bab in Thai, refrain from bapa. Practice kusala, in Thai, guson, wholesome states of mind. Refrain from evil, practice wholesome states of mind. And the third one, visuddhi, purification of mind. The way that you purify the mind, yes, you can purify yourself to some degree by practicing good karma. This will cleanse your spirit, make you more upright, make you more confident. Many times the Buddha talked about moral rectitude, if you know that word, moral uprightness. But your consciousness is still jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing. The way to purify the mind is to hold the mind in restraint from all kinds of conscious or cognizing things. This awareness then starts to manifest by itself. I can say it's bright, I can say it's body awareness, I can say it's intensification, but I can't tell you what to put your mind onto, because that's creating another object of mind. That's using your imagination again. So the only way to do it is by this practice of restraint. All spiritual practices, by the way, that include enlightenment, will have some way of describing this. That meditation is not just another form of mind consciousness. Right? Many forms of mind consciousness. You can jump out of an aeroplane, it's a certain kind of consciousness. Especially if you don't have a parachute. You can eat your favorite food, is a certain kind of consciousness. Right? Marmite on toast. Beautiful, don't pull a face. It's the most perfect. Marmite on toast and tea. I mean, what can be more perfect than that? You can go and see a good movie. You can fall in love. But all of these are conscious states that depend upon you focusing your attention onto something. What if you stop this entire process of the mind focusing or paying attention to different things? It starts to manifest by itself a brightness and a clarity and a purification. If this starts to happen, and it does for most meditators, you miss it, you overlook it. Because as the mind starts to brighten, you start to feel quite happy, and naturally the mind will fill that open space with something. So you start to think about something, you start to meditate on an object, you start to think about heaven and hell, or sleep, or something. So, in the Mindfulness of Body Sutta that I started talking about, the Buddha said he described many different ways to become mindful of the body. You can be mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath, he said. You can be mindful of the whole body as you breathe in and out. You can be mindful of 4 postures, sitting, standing, walking, and lying down. You can be mindful of the body as 32 parts. I can't remember all 32, but it's blood, phlegm, pus, skin, sinew, bone, etc. He lists 32 parts. So there are different ways to get into the awareness of the body. But for each way, he says, stanza by stanza, and so the monk abides, diligent, keen, resolute. Memories and thoughts connected to the lay life are given up. Their mind becomes stilled internally. It settles, unifies, and becomes immersed in samadhi or concentration. So I want to make this point clear, because a lot of schools are teaching mindfulness of body as being like, well, focus on the breath. Boom, that's mindfulness of body. No. Until you get this mind state steadying, settling internally, becoming unified and immersed in samadhi, you're still not practicing mindfulness of body to the high degree. So, the different ways of mindfulness of body, the breathing or the postures, generalized body awareness is also okay if you know how to center yourself there. As you hold your mind back, the body awareness appears as like a root, as a post to which you can use as the meditation object itself. So you're letting go of whatever meditation object you were using. A mantra, a sight, a vision, a thought, counting the breaths, feeling the arising and falling of the stomach. Whichever meditation system you are using, you then switch to the mindfulness of the body. The Buddha described it this way. Imagine a dog, a hyena, a snake, a bird, a crocodile, and a monkey. And you tied each of these to a piece of rope, and you tied the other end of the rope to a stout post. The hyena, the dog, the monkey, the snake, the bird, and the crocodile each try to get to their home territory, but they can't go anywhere because they're tied to a stout post. He said, in the same way, you don't allow your consciousness to go out to any object, including body objects. But the stout post is mindfulness of body. So this I want to make clear for those who are practiced in Buddhism. Because every time I got this body awareness start to arise in the right way, I counted it in my mind as my mind going to body awareness, and I would reject it and come back to my meditation object. Following the breath at the nose, or I like the breath through the center of the body. Sometimes I use a mantra. Be sure that whatever system of meditation you are doing, you are using an object to focus the mind onto. As the mind concentrates and attains in the right way, you have to give up that meditation object and come back to the body as the body starts to appear in consciousness. According to this sutta, one of the attainments that then comes is you start to enter jhana. Jhana is described as concentration meditation. As I mentioned earlier, Wikipedia text that my student was reading from said that you concentrate harder and harder and harder and finer on your meditation object, and is incorrect according to the sutta and according to your actual experience as you meditate. The actual experience is, initially, you need focused attention. Pali word, vitakka vichara. Vitakka means to throw, and vichara means to hover. So it's described as like a bee that sees a flower that's attractive and will aim towards that flower. When it gets to the flower, it will hover around the flower before it lands. Vitakka vichara means to throw your attention and keep your attention onto something. In order to enter the first jhana, the first concentration level, you need to have that purpose of mind, the focusing of mind on an object. As soon as it does so, though, you can switch from the object onto the body. The body will start to appear quite pleasant. The Pali word, piti, or rapture, it's not really rapturous. Rapturous is when England win the World Cup. I mean, that's rapture. I'm talking rugby, of course. We don't care about football. Partly because you have to go back before I was born for England winning the World Cup at football. Although the women's team nearly won the World Cup a couple of years ago, British women's team. We lost to the Spanish. Anyway, so that's rapturous. That's like when you're thrilled and you're excited and boom, it's New Year's Eve or you've just fallen in love. That's rapture. This word piti is experienced as an energization, goes through the body. It's a physical sensation. Will energize the body, make you sit upright. It can start to move your body and your shoulders around as the body starts to straighten itself out as you get into balance. This piti, according to the sutta, mindfulness of body sutta, the Buddha says, pervades the entire body. Like if you were to get flour and you were to put some honey on the flour and knead and press until the flour is completely saturated with honey. In the same way, this rapture becomes saturated throughout the entire body. This is word for word. You can look up for yourself Gayakata Sati Sutta. I think Sutta number 119. If you want to look it up, I can put a link on Facebook. So at this point, you've let go of your meditation object and you have moved into this piti, I want to use the Pali word, which is a very strong or intensified body consciousness. But your mind isn't creating an object out of it. It arises because the mind isn't going to anything. This is the flowering of consciousness as it will start to appear to you. You then move from that, abandon the vitakka vichara, you go into this body consciousness. The rapture or the energization can start to settle and you move into sukha or happiness. There is a... So sukha is translated as happiness, but I want to say contentment. Because there's a feeling now that the mind does not need to go anywhere in order to be perfected. It gives you the insight. Every good feeling I've had in my entire life relies on me putting attention on something. When I stop putting my attention onto that thing, the happiness from it will dissipate. But this is a happiness that arises not based on sense desire, sense contact. It's something that manifests by itself because the mind is held in restraint. It's now purified. So the Buddha lists a whole bunch of benefits that come from this practice. By the way, you move into fourth jhana. So first one was the applied attention. The second one was the rapture that comes through the body. Third one is this contentment that arises also together with body consciousness, generalized body consciousness. The body will appear as pleasant to be in. The fourth one, equanimity. He pervades the entire body awash with bright mind. This is the actual word that he's using, Sakyamuni Buddha, 2,500 years ago. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm not giving you Wikipedia Dhamma. I'm telling you the actual words that he used. With a bright mind. And it feels like that. The brightness is not light. It's not a visualization. It's just a feeling of everything just becomes bright and pure and clean. So the fourth jhana, the final one in the list, he pervades the body with a bright mind. He goes on to mention some benefits of doing this practice. And one of them jumped out at me the other day because something that I've been mulling over in my own private life recently. One of the benefits, he says, you will prevail over desire and discontentment. So the mind that's immersed or caught in desire and discontentment, or desire and aversion, you can prevail over it. Means that mind does not get hold of you. He said, Mara, who is the god of delusion, cannot get hold of you, cannot get hold of your mind. Fear and dread will not get hold of your mind. I have a funny story about that. If you want to hear it, when I went face to face with the ghost in England, but if you want to hear it, I'll tell you. One can endure wind, heat, cold, insects, touch of gadflies, mosquitoes. One can endure. One can, and here's the thing that jumped out at me, one can endure rude or unwelcome criticism and views. I thought that's a really interesting consequence of mindfulness of body. I hadn't noticed that before in the teaching. He said the other benefits, one can attain to the four jhanas, to the psychic powers, apinya, to the seeing of past lives, seeing of heavens and hells, the attainment of enlightenment, jeta vimutti jnana dasana, seeing and knowing the liberation of the citta. And one can see past lives and karma in operation. I found this interesting, that one of the benefits of mindfulness of body is you can endure rude or unwelcome criticisms or opinions, which is quite interesting. I see in my own observation, looking around in the world, especially in media and especially from America, that everything that is presented to us these days is so heavily opinionated. Especially in the States, you have these two parties in the States, and media is now, it seems to me, either fully on one side or fully on the other. And everything that you hear is almost like they're strapping on pom-poms and mini dresses and being cheerleaders for their own side with no basis of objective truth. Seems to me this comes out, and all sides do it. So I was practicing this last week. I was down on the beach near Hua Hin and was talking with somebody who is very forceful in his opinions. Is that put politely? That's as politely as I can put it. And he would hammer you with his opinions and talk for 25 minutes and not allow you to say anything. I don't know how this topic came up, but he said, we were talking about the actress Goldie Hawn. You know her? I don't know how we got onto Goldie Hawn. I like Goldie Hawn. She's a Buddhist, by the way. Did you know that? And she has a long-term partner called Kurt Russell, who's also an actor. I don't remember too much about his films. And they have a daughter called Kate Hudson. And this guy brought up, he said, and they're a really good family, these two guys, you know, the Goldie and Kurt Russell, and their daughter. And I said, Kate Hudson is not the daughter of Kurt Russell. Her father was a different man, and Kurt Russell is his stepfather. No, it's his daughter. Now, I don't even know why I know this. I don't have any idea why I care. Probably because he's so forceful with every opinion that now I've got opinion that I can get on my phone and in 3 seconds, ha, you are wrong. I have this desperate urge to do that. Desperate urge, like other things we discussed are a matter of opinion. He likes this person, I don't like that person, or he doesn't like someone I do like, or he probably believes in climate change. I'm just throwing that in to tweak you. But this is something that I can prove, and my hand is twitching for my phone. It's like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And then it's just views and opinions. Bring my attention back. I have this body awareness. As soon as I go into it now, because I know the right way to practice it, I can drop all objects, all things. This brightness appears before me, and it comes with this satisfaction of like, I don't need anything. I don't even need to prove to him that he's wrong. I just need to bring it up in the following week's Dharma talk. So I can prove to you that he was wrong without getting attacked. So what does it feel like when somebody has a view that you don't agree with? It's difficult to bear, right? I fall into this myself too, when people come up with viewpoints and opinions. When somebody shakes their head and says, Marmite is disgusting, then I want to tell you, no, you haven't tried it. I want to give it to you. What does it feel like when someone says something that you don't agree with, or that you find disagreeable, or that you think is wrong? Don't you have that urge, that upwelling? I find it interesting. The Buddha listed as one of the benefits of mindfulness of body is one can endure disagreeable or uncalled for opinions. And it's true, you can. Because I'm a monk, I'm supposed to be nice to people, so I can't disagree with you too much. If you have a strong opinion, I have to say, oh, that's very interesting. So what I do is I gamify it, and I have certain responses like, oh, that's very interesting, or I will take note of that idea. And I turn it into a game. When I do that, I have this mindfulness of body come back, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Those things don't matter. They matter because my attention is on it. Then it matters. when I put my attention elsewhere, especially somewhere that's beautiful and peaceful, like, oh yeah, that stuff doesn't matter. I can let him have his viewpoint. He can believe that Kate Hudson is really the daughter of Kurt Russell. Shouldn't bother me, right? Shouldn't affect me. So I put tell you what I did. I shouldn't tell you, but I will just to finish off. I put my attention onto the mindfulness of body, well, the brightness of mind. I can call it up and find it very quickly now. And oh, that's right. I can have some metta. And then I let him just go. And he'll talk and talk and talk and talk until he burns himself out. And me and his girlfriend were sitting there, and the two of us, I'm not sure what's going on in her mind. She told me afterwards that he drives her crazy. So I don't know what's happening in her mind. But the two of us were just sitting there and letting him just wind his way out. Then he started accusing us of being passive-aggressive. Like, I haven't got a word in edgeways yet. It is quite funny, though, that I've heard people who practice good mindfulness say this quite a lot, and I think it is true, that if you do this, if you put your mind in this way, they will start to get their own self-awareness. They start to see themselves with this strong viewpoint that they're hammering you with, and they start to unwind their way out of it. Unfortunately, it took this guy 6 days. But after 6 days, suddenly he started to sit there with us and listen to our conversation, because she and I were having a great conversation when he's not there. So it did seem to work after a period of time that he started to come round. It's happened with another man. I invited him here to do a Dharma talk about 15 years ago, and I went to see him up at the place where he was staying, and he found out that I come from one temple. He doesn't like the meditation system in my temple. He feels his meditation system is the right one. So he started to tell me why my meditation system was wrong and his system is right. And I'm like, okay. And I let him go and go and go. It took 3 days. 3 solid days. And after a while, he was teaching me, and then he'd say, well, I'm sure you know this kind of stuff. And eventually, after 3 days, he says, so what do you think? I think I want to go home, man. I had enough. So I'm going to leave these thoughts with you this evening. This is the teaching on mindfulness of body that the Buddha actually gave. Holding the mind back in restraint from going out to any object. As you do this, you need applied focus initially, but you have to let go of that applied focus in order to attain to the concentration levels. The teachers and teachings that say concentration is focusing on an object are wrong. This is incorrect. You switch from the object to the rapture, to the happiness or sukha, from the sukha to the equanimity or upekkha, stage by stage. Is a relaxing of conscious attention, not a strengthening of conscious attention. And the benefits: you can prevail over desire and discontentment, fear and dread, wind, insects, heat, cold, and unwelcome criticism. And physical pain, attain to 4 jhanas, psychic powers, past lives, heavens and hells, and enlightenment itself. So those were the benefits that he listed for mindfulness of body. Anyone have any question or comment? Joe, go ahead. You don't need the microphone.
Yeah, well, you talked about attachment and how, saying that attachment is what causes suffering isn't really accurate.
You better be.
Yeah. And I would feel very bad if she left me, but attachment can go to extremes. I mean, one guy who killed himself after his wife left him. So I think that's what we're really thinking of when people say attachment can cause suffering. It's that the attachment is so extreme. I mean, I would feel very bad if I lost all my money, but other people kill themselves when they lose all their money. So isn't it like a matter of degree, how attached you are, or clinging or grasping, and so that extreme kind of attachment can be the cause of suffering.
Right.
Can you repeat the question?
So the question is, attachment causes suffering. Joe is pointing out that strong forms of attachment can cause extreme suffering. But the statement was attachment, not strong attachment. It's a bit like that quotation from the Bible that money is the root of all evil, and it's actually not correct. It was the love of money is the root of all evil. So this, in Buddhism, it's attachment itself is the cause of suffering. But what that means is, from the purified consciousness perspective, whenever the mind goes out to anything, it starts to get agitated. And you compare that to the purified mind, and then it becomes like blindingly obvious. Oh yeah, this purified mind, purified consciousness is it. This is what was being talked about. But every time I go out to anything, that causes a kind of agitation. Even Marmite on toast, even things that I enjoy, is still creating a kind of dukkha. Part of our problem is, in English, we translate dukkha as suffering. And that was not the meaning of the word dukkha in the original. Dukkha has the sense of a wheel that isn't balanced properly. And if you imagine a wheel that isn't perfectly balanced, the faster you spin it, it starts to shake. This is what, when you have tires fitted in your car, they charge you for balancing. And you'll probably just think that's just a $10 surcharge that they slap on. But actually, if you look at the wheel of your car, there are little tiny weights placed around the rim of the wheel. And they spin your wheel very fast, and they find where it's out of balance, and they put these tiny weights on. Otherwise, when you're doing 50 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, your steering wheel will start to shake if you don't have this balance. So the word dukkha had that original meaning of an unbalanced wheel. It means it starts to shake consciousness. Doesn't mean suffering as in really extreme or unpleasant suffering. So there were three kinds of suffering, dukkha. Dukkha dukkhata, the suffering of pain, or the dukkha of pain. Viparinama dukkhata, the suffering that comes from change. It's just things changing. Whether you like them or dislike them, you're enjoying them or not enjoying them. And then sankhara dukkhata, which is the suffering of just having a mind state. There's debates about the translation of sankhara, I won't go into, but just having any kind of mind state where the mind is latched onto some kind of sense consciousness, that also is suffering. But of course that's not extreme suffering. I'm eating my Marmite on toast. I certainly have a mind state, that's dukkha, but I'm enjoying myself. So dukkha is not just the unpleasant suffering, it means any shaking of the consciousness. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're almost finished. If there's a real quick question, we could have it. If not,
We've got, okay, we've got 5 minutes on my clock. Yeah, quick
question.
Go ahead.
I wonder if the Kate Hudson story isn't an attachment story too. Here's what I mean. If you didn't know who her father was, you wouldn't care about his position. I mean, what causes the twitching, to
Right.
prove him wrong? It's the fact that you know who the father is, and is that an attachment to your own kind of position?
Yeah, it's also just that he was annoying me. quite,
3 days.
No, 6 days he was hammering at us with these different viewpoints and things. Yeah, I mean, because I don't care about I don't even know how I know that information. I remember Goldie Hawn because she's a practicing Buddhist, so she has a charity which at one point I almost was somewhat involved in, so that's how I know her. But yeah, attachment will suck your attention out. Mindfulness of body will bring your attention back, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I have this really stupid movie in mind that demonstrates this, but it was a movie called The Knockaround Guys, I think, a Vin Diesel movie, and John Malkovich was in it. I like John Malkovich. Anyway, there's these two kids, very briefly, and they find a massive bag of money, and they're like, okay, all we have to do is run out of state and keep the money. But if we stay here, someone's going to come back looking for the money. So that's all they have to do. So they're about to run, and the one kid is getting his skateboard and putting it in his bag and a few other possessions. And the other kid says, like, you don't need your skateboard. And the kid's like, man, I need my skateboard, dude. I need my stuff. And the other kid says, holds up the bag of money and says, we'll get new stuff. And the kid goes, oh, that's right. And then they run. I don't know why this scene stuck in my mind for a long time. If you have attained or purified consciousness, every time you get caught up in stuff and you remember this, oh, that's right. It doesn't matter because of this. So that's how I think the mindfulness of body is operating. You don't need to take your skateboard with you.
I'd love to spend the next hour just fielding questions, letting you field questions, but I guess we do have to end.
Yeah.
I have a question because wasn't able to. I have a very practical question, and unlike philosophical question. You'll be here next week.
Right.
And the following week.
I mean, I'm here, but.
Okay, so maybe what we'll do, because I think there's sort of a fluidness to our schedule, so we know that you're going to be here next week.
Yeah.
I think for the next 6 weeks or so, or 5 or 6 weeks, we're going to be trying to make it until every Monday. So it'll be every Monday, either with Pandit, another speaker perhaps, or with Dharma Circle, which is everybody's welcome. I can't give you the exact dates.
Right. It goes on Facebook, right?
It will go
Yeah.
on Facebook. It's not on Facebook yet, I don't think.
Right.
Okay, and so to conclude, thank you all for coming, and thank you for the very practical sort of how to do stuff type talk, which we can take home with us and practice. And I'd like to ask people to help a little bit in two ways. First, bring these small chairs into here if you can, and the rule is they want us to keep 6 white chairs in this room. So what's not beyond 6 goes downstairs into the conference room. And if you're feeling generous, hopefully, there is 2 boxes outside, one for the speaker to help with some of his expenses, and one to help with the expenses of this building, because we are the gracious guests of the Ari Foundation. So thank you, and thank you for coming, and hopefully we will definitely see Pandit here, and hopefully we'll see many of you here as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. If anyone wants to chat further while others are leaving, you're welcome just to chat with me. And Joe wants to say that
He also wants to say something, yeah.
he's going to.
Of us will go to a cafe or a restaurant afterwards. Everyone is welcome to join.
Only 6 need to go down.
We're here 2 weeks.
Oh, a few weeks.
Okay, no, it's nice to see you. Hey,
Fantastic talk. Loved it.
did we meet before?
I don't think so.
Okay, I didn't recognize you.
I've
Okay.
been here a few times, but I don't think that was the time for me to go around.
Okay. You were from where?
I'm from Sri Lanka, but I've been living here for a bit.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I kind of had a question. I find myself, I've been meditating for 5-6 years as well. I find myself quite able to have the body awareness, even when people piss me off, kind of thing. But one of the things what I keep noticing is, well, a thought comes, disturbing thought in one way or another, and you calm down when it comes back 2 minutes later again.
Right, it sneaks its way back in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it gets a little difficult to disconnect from it.
Yeah. So you have two options. You can either go into and examine the thought and try to find why it keeps coming back. And usually there's a feeling, like a feeling of fear or resentment or something. There's that feeling that you're not acknowledging. And if you can acknowledge that feeling, usually you get like a catharsis, like, that's what it is, now I can put it down. The other way you can do it is abandon it and go for the concentration. As you go into the concentration and purify the mind, and remember it's not going tighter and tighter onto an object. The object